Hello, I'm Michael Cottingham, and I'm a clinical herbalist from Silver City, New Mexico. And today I'm on a mountainside on the border of Arizona and New Mexico, about 8,000 feet. And today I'm just going to talk a little bit about one of my favorite antiviral medicines, especially for the respiratory system, and that's Osha, or Ligusticum porteri, as it's called in Latin. And there are other names for Osha. Chuchupate is more of like a northern Mexico. People in the mountains, in the Rocky Mountains, call it bear medicine, and that's because in the springtime it is well known that the bears come out of their hibernation cycles and actually come to root and dig up and eat copious amounts of Osha root to help invigorate the blood and to kind of wake up from their winter slumbers. This is a lovely example of an Osha root, and this root 7 to maybe 10 years old, and in the stand that I'm located at right now, there are some plants that I would guess are 50 to 60 to 70 and maybe older, but at least 50 years old or more. I've been coming to this particular stand for about 22 years, and I've done a lot of seeding on this mountainside and have watched a lot of the little seedlings grow and get bigger and bigger, and I've watched some of the mama plants, and there are some plants that were very large when I got here 22 years ago, and they're still alive and still growing, still making hundreds of seeds. I'll first notice that seedlings love to grow in the hoof prints of elk and deer, and so I would notice that there'd be these hoof prints that have made a divot on the mountain slope here, and out of that hoof print would be a little seedling. And so when I started planting the seeds, I would bend. It's a umbel, has an umbel flower, so I would bend that when the seed heads were mature. I would bend them down into a divot that I would make and put a little dirt on them. And sure enough, that seemed to encourage more little seedlings to grow. So I kind of mimicked what I saw already happening in nature, which, like I said, was the hoof prints of deer and elk, and those little divots on the hillside is where all the little baby Oshas would spring. Very successful, and I don't know exactly how many, but because I purposely set out to plant the seeds, thousands of little Osha seedlings erupted on this hillside over the last 20 years. Osha, or Ligusticum porteri, is one of our great respiratory antivirals. And it's an amazing antiviral that creates a lot of movement. And so, like, if you have a stuck condition in the lungs and you have a viral infection or a bacterial infection with lots of infectious phlegm and a lot of coughing, and it's just stuck, taking Osha root medicine, whether it's the fresh root extract or dry root extract or dry root just eaten, or the tea from it, will help to break up that congestion and either get you to start respirating out the waste, coughing up the phlegm, elimination through sweating, and elimination through the urinary tract. But there's also constituents in the root that are distinctly very antiviral, which outright might inhibit viral growth and maybe even kill the virus and bacteria to some degree. So it's a very significant antiviral throughout the entire body, but it seems to have a very specific emphasis for the lower and the upper respiratory. So it means you can use it in sinus infections, tonsillitis, any lymphatic stuck condition, conditions in the lungs where you have lots of phlegm buildup. This is a moving plant. It's a plant you could describe by creating lots of movement and lots of heat in the body, sweating and urinating and respirating. And movement is often a very key thing that we're trying to achieve when matching up a illness with a particular herbal medicine. So when you have a stuck condition in the lungs, this creates amazing lung movement and helps you to eliminate that stuck condition in the lungs. The leaf, when it's very green like this, is really a nice, makes a really nice spice. This is a member of the parsley family, Osha is, and so the leaf tastes somewhat like parsley. So in the New Mexican herbal tradition and in the up and down the Rio Grande River, dry Osha leaf was used to season stews and soups and other dishes. It's also the dry leaf of Osha can be used for stomach aches and cramps and colic-like conditions. It's a very good antispasmodic, the leaf tea in the upper and lower GI. It's a good antispasmodic. It'll soothe the stomach. It mixes really well with catnip or fennel and Osha leaf together, make a really nice combination. I love the taste, and I use it in a lot of my cooking in Southwestern. Dominantly, we use the fresh root, and I'll take this root home and wash off the dirt a little bit. I don't want to use too much water on this plant and wash away the oils, so I'll use very cold water when I'm actually trying to remove the dirt. And then I'll chop up the root and make sure it's really clean. Chop up the root and then do a 1 to 2 fresh plant extract. But also Osha roots fresh, or dry for that matter, but Osha roots fresh make an amazing cough syrup. And so what we'll do is we'll wash the root, chop it up, and then steep it in a 1 to 2 ratio, meaning 1 part herb to 2 parts honey, and steep that for a couple weeks, maybe even double boil it or slow heat it for a while to kind of release the medicine into the honey. Honey's not the best of solvents, but it's an effective solvent, but sometimes a little heat. So a double boiler with the honey Osha root set in another pan of water. Don't let the water really boil or the honey really boil, but warm it up and turn it off, warm it up and turn it off, and do this for a few days and get that medicine into the honey. And it makes a marvelous, we call it Osha root honey. It will stop coughing. It'll help to nurture the lungs and help to create a little bronchial dilation. This is a great respiratory herb. 1914 to 1918 pandemic that swept the world, killing, I don't know, 20 to 60 million people, depending on what books you read on the history of that pandemic. But that influenza caused a lot of people, in a sense, to drown in their fluids. It was a virus an influenza virus that filled up the lungs and slowed down the heart and basically created a super stuck condition in the body, making the body literally fill up with fluids, and you drowned in your own fluids. And so that pandemic killed close to 50 million people worldwide. In New Mexico, Osha root played an amazing role in helping to stop people from dying, prevent people from dying. Literally, there were several plants, Osha and Immortal and Yerba Manza. These were 3 plants that played a crucial role for those who knew the plants in the state of New Mexico. During that 1918 influenza epidemic, New Mexico wasn't very well populated with hospitals and doctors and such, so a lot of people relied on their traditional healers to help them with their illnesses. So when that pandemic hit the Southwest, killing tens of thousands of people, there are many stories where this root, Osha root, played an amazing role in helping people not having to suffer or not dying from that particular influenza that swept the world. And so I still think of it as a very life-saving type of medicine. And I just wanted to share a little bit with you about Osha root. It's a fabulous medicine.